Thank you for joining us today. This Whole House Performance webinar series is sponsored by Pacific Gas and Electric Company as part of the Energy Upgrade California program. I'm your moderator, Erin McCollum of Electric and Gas Industries Association. As you're aware, we've provided an email with a web page where you may download the presentations to review and print copies if you prefer. Also, we've arranged this GoToWebinar link, which allows you to view the presentation slides as we advance them. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a video-audio link will be emailed to all of you tomorrow and linked to the contractor portal so that you may share this with others in your organization who may be interested in our topic but were unable to join us today. Your phone lines are on mute. Please, if you have a question, type that into the GoToWebinar application, and we'll be getting to those at the conclusion of our presentations today. This webinar is titled Whole House Strategies That Work. You're going to hear an overview of successful sales strategies and kitchen table close techniques being used by whole house contractors in California, with important how-to details on applying those lessons they learned into your business. Today's presenters are Ed Thomas and Eric Howarth of EGIA. Ed oversees EGIA's utility and government-sponsored program activities. He serves on the boards of Utility Energy Forum, the Home Performance Resource Center, and EGIA, as well as he is on the executive committee of Recharge Colorado. Before joining EGIA, Ed managed a geothermal heat pump installation company in Colorado. Eric is responsible for developing and executing EGIA's overall contractor services strategy. He has extensive sales, marketing, and strategic partnering experience. Prior to joining EGIA, Eric held senior management positions in sales, marketing, and product development. So without further ado, we will kick it off here with Eric.
Thank you, Erin. Next slide, there you go. Today's webinar will be about sales and customer service. What we're going to talk about is some key elements that top contractors out there throughout the country are using to help close sales. We're going to review why having a sales process is important, pre-qualifying a customer, in-home sales routine, closing techniques, follow-up and referrals, and ensuring customer service. Salesmanship. I thought we'd start with some definitions here on what salesmanship is. Salesmanship is a skill in selling or a skill in persuading people to buy. Customer service is the provision of service to customers before, during, and after the purchase. And quality is meeting or exceeding your customer's expectations. So one of the things we're going to do through the sales process is make sure that we can start from the beginning of the sale, work through the end of the sale, and ensure that, that we meet the quality and expectations of the customer as part of the process. So first of all, let's start with who your competition is, because a lot of your competition is already doing these things out there in the marketplace. Your competition in the whole house business or throughout the contracting business is not just your competitor across the road. It's also, you know, guys that install granite countertops or tile floors are your competition. A new BMW is your competition. Pools, big screen TVs, even investment and savings nowadays with folks trying to put their nest egg away because they're worried about the economy. So why do I need to sell? I install quality work, and that should be enough and speak for itself. I hear this throughout the nation all the time, and the one thing that I always ask contractors as part of this is if you do believe you are the quality installer, if you're the one that should be installing that work, then you should be the one that's got the marketing dollars out there to actually drive those customers to you. And you can't get those margin dollars if you're not selling as part of a sales process, because you're not going to build enough value for the customer to buy from you at a higher sales price. And so guys always say, I always ask them, who's the biggest guy in town? And I always ask the question, is he the low-cost provider? And 10 out of 10 times, He is not the low-cost provider because he has to have the money for marketing. He has to have the money for those other things. But he is an expert at building value for the customer and quality for the customer, and at least the customer's perception of that. So if you want to increase your margin dollars, that's why you want to be a part of this. If you want to, expand your business, and if you don't want to have to worry about payroll every month, then the big thing to do is, of course, to price your job right. And the sales process is an important part of making that happen. Is it really a price war out there? We talked a little bit about that. It's not really a price war out there. The guys that are the most expensive contractors do it every day. They're selling things for more than you are, but they're building value for the customer and making it happen. So what's important to you is that you have a sales process that builds value for the customer and allows you to successfully sell at a price that you can put aside money for marketing, and you can put aside to have the right tools, to have the best equipment, and to provide the proper customer service that you should for your customer out there. So let's start with the process. The process really begins at the beginning, and we're going to start after the marketing dollars. We've already talked about the fact that you should be building in the amount for marketing dollars, and that was another webinar we did on marketing. But once those calls come in, what do you do with them? Well, the first thing you need to do is pre-qualify those leads to really increase your closing ratio. The whole idea here is that you're going to ask questions to the homeowner that pre-qualify the customer. And this should be your receptionist, and if it's just you on your cell phone, then it should be you. You should have a set of questions that you set aside, because you've already spent the money on marketing, and you want to make the most of every one. So, you should ask questions like, what prompted you to call? Do you own your own home? What's the approximate age of your home? Is there any other decision makers that I should put on your account file before I go out there? That's, of course, going to let you know if the husband or the wife are both going to be part of the decision-making process, or if there's just someone that's going to be in the home that can answer that question right away. And have you previously looked into or recently done any other energy-efficient upgrades? That's going to let you know if they've already replaced their HVAC system that this is more an air sealing and a insulation job, more so than that. Or if they've replaced their furnace, you might have a chance of replacing their air conditioning too with something more efficient as well. You also want to ensure consistency in the home in the presentation. Most of the largest contractors we work with in the nation have a consistent sales process, or they called it a pitch book in the old days, but I think it's more PC nowadays to call a home presentation system. So the whole idea is that whether it's a flip card or a lot of guys are using laptops now, it's a presentation where you can walk the homeowner through and build value for the homeowner and also help overcome hidden objections along the way. So the whole idea is that there's consistency, so you don't leave something out for that particular type of buyer, and you can answer all the questions. So remember that the whole idea is building value for the customer and showing them why they would want to do business with you. And that all starts with the in-home questionnaire, which we already went through. It kind of leads into the next step, which is talking about who you are. You should always have a one-page description of who you are, something signed by the owners, the best, talking about quality or talking about how he cares about his installs and how proud he is of his company, to what your standards of excellence are. And if you've been in business for quite a few years, well, then you really should play that up, because that means a lot to folks too, because that shows stability and that you'll be around. But if you haven't been in business for a long time, you at least want to talk about what your standards are, your excellence, and you want it to be signed by the owner. But you do want a one-page thing that kind of shows a lot of pride in your company. You also want to brag about credentials. You've been through, a lot of you guys through the EUC program have been through a lot to get there. And as a result, you've been through all the training, you put up all the money for it. Why not brag about it? You want to put all your certificates and awards in a visual presentation for the homeowner. You want to make sure that the homeowner sees that you've been through all these extra steps. That's something that can set you aside from Joe Pickup Truck or whoever else that's just driving around, not pulling permits or doing the other things he's supposed to do to make that happen. So the whole idea of this part of the presentation is, of course, if you have a lot of awards and certificates, that's good. Use them all. Some guys even have a separate book put aside that they can actually hand the homeowner and say, hey, here's a few of our latest awards, but we actually have, all these other ones too. You can browse through this if you want to. It's not a bad thing to show that you've been an accredited and awarded contractor. Explain also, why you're taking the whole house approach. Why are you taking this approach, and why is the local HVAC contractor not taking this approach? Make sure you tell them that you're going to use state-of-the-art equipment, that you're going to make sure that you're installing the right things, and that you're going to back it up with real numbers. You're not going to just suggest something, based on the finger method, standing on the curb, handing up 3 fingers, and say that looks like a 3-ton. You're not going to do that. You're going to take the time to do it right and take the extra steps to make sure the homeowner is taken care of. Once again, still building the value for the homeowner that you're a step above the next contractor. You also want to go into any brags and awards you've got, from Angie's List to the Better Business Bureau. Make sure you print your Better Business Bureau if you're listed on there. Any manufacturer awards you won, so if you've been the Contractor of the Year or the Most Approved, any of that stuff shows value. So make sure if you have those awards that you flaunt them. So not only accreditation, but also flaunt your awards. Anytime you win something, make sure that your whole sales team has a copy of it and they're out there bragging about it. Shows pride in your company. Go ahead. And as part of the Energy Upgrade California program, of course, you've been through even extra steps on the PG&E side and or any other programs you have that might have screened you. So if you've got Diamond Certified or any of those other things, then you've been through all these screening processes, satisfactory license, BBB, insurance, trade references. You want to make sure clients know that you have all these things, because that is what sets you apart from the guy that's just driving up with a low ball estimate. Showing that you're a professional company that's going to install it right and take care of them. And believe it or not, there are also warranty buyers out there. You want to, as part of your presentation system, also talk about warranty. There are people that believe that, they want to know that they're going to be taken care of down the road. You see it all the time in commercials for white goods and stuff out there, talking about the warranty and how much time they have. There are warranty buyers. So you do want to touch on it. What you don't want to do, of course, is touch on or give them the whole warranty manual, because we know how thick those are when you print them off the manufacturer websites. But you do want to have a limited detail about the warranties and why you chose the particular product, and show some pride in the products that you chose and the warranty, and talk to homeowners about that, because that can be a difference. Remember, overcoming those hidden objections that some customers might have. You also want to sell service. We highly recommend that in order to lock that customer in for life, that you talk about service and how you're going to be there to service their air conditioner, that once a year or as they need it, and sell service plans that lock that customer into you for the life of the customer. So as long as you take care of them and give them good customer service, that they're pretty much locked into you, and you taking care of their needs for the future. It's a great way to do that, selling service plans. You also want to tell them what steps. There are, people worry about their homes. They worry about guys coming in, cutting in new returns, doing all this stuff. This energy efficiency stuff can get messy, and they worry about that. They want to make sure that that you as a contractor are going to take care of them. So you should outline the steps you're going to do to take care of them. You should outline, that you're going to wear blue booties. You're going to cover exposed furniture. You're going to take special care of plants and shrubs if you're doing stuff outside. Saying little things like, I noticed you have these roses right there that are well taken care of, and I want to make sure that we don't hurt those. But if we do, what you're going to do to take care of them. Tell them that you're going to vacuum up after yourself, you're going to take care of. And I know it sounds rudimentary, it sounds like something that you shouldn't, but remember, if you say it and the other guy doesn't, then you're a step above that other guy, because you're telling them what you're going to do to take care of their home. You also want referrals in there. And as much as you can do in referrals of getting pictures of the family, I know on rooftop units we don't want to put them up there, but if you get a picture of the family next to, one of our contractors gets the pictures of the family right next to their split system unit outside, or even in the closet if the furnace is in there or anything else. So if it is accessible, take pictures to go with your referrals, and make sure that you're asking for referrals on a regular basis. So and that you get them, but to the extent that you can get pictures for your presentation binder and show it, I would. There's also a lot of neat tools out there. Some contractors out there even Google mapping all of the jobs that they've done in the past and putting that in their presentation book. It's a great way to show, like, hey, yeah, we were just in your neighborhood. In fact, we've done 4 installs just there last week. That kind of shows them that other people have picked you and shows the depth and breadth of the jobs you've done. And I think you'd be surprised, even smaller shops, once they put in all the jobs that they've done over time in all the areas, you'd be surprised how many jobs show up on the Google map. And it's a real powerful statement to have in your sales book. And that's something, of course, you can add to every week at weekly sales meetings or any of the other things that you do. So at some part in the presentation, of course, after you've built all the value, once again, you've showed them all the things you're going to do to take care of their house. You've shown them your credentials. You showed them all the rewards and certificates. You've made some sort of a statement about how your company has been in business a long time and you're going to take care of, and what your motto is. Then you're going to get to the point where you're going to share the results of the audit. We want to make sure that you share these results in as plain English as possible. You don't get into all the acronyms or anything else that can go along with this stuff. And you share basic energy data information. There are the exceptions, of course. There are the engineers or the CPAs or some of those folks that really get into that stuff. And you can get into the weeds with those people if you want. But the basic homeowner, you want to share basic comfort, safety, and energy results that you've gotten as part of the data that you've shown. And it can be a powerful tool in that. So make sure you have an easy, concise way of sharing those results with the customer. And then when you're proposing, you want to make sure you do a good, better, best type situation. You want to make sure that as you outline your good, better, best system, that you give them multiple options. You never want to put one option in the marketplace, because there are going to be folks that are drawn to the better. The whole idea of a good, better, best system is, of course, that nobody wants to pick the worst system and no one wants to pick always the best system. But there's a lot more people that go, okay, I'll take the one in the middle. So if you look at the good, better, best in this scenario, you can actually use financing to help sell it. So the whole idea is that you line out the job totals for each one, and this is just sort of a hypothetical example. You might be able to put the job costs using maybe your typical revolving loan, like through your manufacturer or whatever else costs, and you'd list that out at whatever the cost would be. In this case, the program I was using was our GeoSmart program at $90 a month for that program. And then you could go to the Better Best program. Well, put them on a Power Saver loan program, for instance, at a 15-year term, showing a lower monthly payment for the larger dollar amounts. And of course, they're going to have energy savings as a result of those things, and you're going to be able to show them a low net monthly payment that oftentimes could be lower than what it would be if they went with the good. This is a great way to upsell a customer, showing them, and of course, since you're doing the test in, test out, and you've got the data based on their current usage, you could say if you stay with your current usage, then you could, your net payment could be less by going with the better system. This is a great way to upsell, and a way that a lot of our large selling organizations do in the good, better, best scenario. Closing best practices. You definitely want to reference back. Once you get to the close part, this is the part where you want to reiterate the questions that you asked as part of your process, your sales process. So you want to read back to them. Oh, you told me that your son had allergies. You told me that it was uncomfortable in this particular room. You told me that it gets hot in this room during certain times of the year. You want to read back the different questions that you asked, and you want to answer those in the scope. So as you read out your good, better, best, your best should outline and answer all of those questions that you asked and that they answered, so that you abridged all their questions. So you can say, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, we outlined in our best proposal everything that you told us that you needed. And then you want to ask for the sale. So the whole idea is if you've gone through all this to get there, I've been with tons of contractors in the home that'll drop off a bid and never actually ask for the sale. At some point, you do actually have to ask for the sale. A contract just doesn't do it, because it could be that they're just on the thing. So the whole idea is give them a contract and a pen and ask for the sale. At some point, You don't want to be the one that talks. You want to sit back and wait for them to answer. So once you give them a pen, you go through the scope, you outline everything you've done, you want to hand them a contract and a pen and sit and wait to see what happens. Some guys even say, there's a long queue of silence. I've even heard some guys say that they'll, at this point, ask to use the restroom or something to give the folks a chance to really think about the sale and think about the decision they're making. So closing best practices, the big rule here is if you don't ask for a sale, you're just not going to get it. So here's an example of a closing statement that a lot of guys use, using financing, which could be a great way to do it. The system that best fits your needs, we can get you for as little as $116 a month. That's approximately $50 a month after your energy bill savings. That's only $1.66 a day. Or, if you just don't want to make a payment right now, we do have 12 months no payments. Remember, there's two different types of buyers. You've got cash buyers who could write you a check right there, but they just don't. For some reason, something's holding them back from doing so. Or you have payment buyers. So this type of close actually addresses both your payment buyer as well as your cash buyer, and gives them a reason to pull the trigger. And of course, then you want the thing. When would you like to have us begin your installation? Another example of a close. So financing. Financing, as you can see, is an important part in those tools through the presentation process because it makes it affordable. So why should you offer financing? Mainly because it can increase your closing ratio up to 40%. It's going to give you up to 20% larger projects and I think we showed you overall why. But most importantly, it helps homeowners and business owners overcome cash separation anxiety. And that's that dread you get when you have to write a big check out of your savings account. And everybody gets it, out there. So remember, a lot of folks, they live paycheck to paycheck. Because the average homeowner in the United States of America, has about $5,000 in their savings account. So you should never prejudge any customer. Every time you walk in the home, no matter what their house looks like, no matter what their car looks like, no matter what anything looks like, you need to realize that that homeowner might be living still paycheck to paycheck. I think we saw with what happened recently in the economy that there were a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck. They might have had a BMW and a nice house, but they still were spending at their means. They were living up to their means. So when things got a little rough and sales weren't there and commissions went down and whatnot, they were unable to take care of those. Remember that every homeowner you go into, don't prejudge their situation. Ensure that you always do the same consistent sales process and that you'll always offer a low monthly payment that's affordable for them. And here's a case study of just one HVAC contractor that we had that had a phenomenal experience with financing. That he basically took a 5-year deferred interest equal pay program that we had, and he actually just, for the first time, really started pushing financing, put it on his website, put it on everything else. The result was, a volume that went from $275,000 a month to $610,000. So he went back to where he was during the glory days just by getting aggressive in marketing and financing, and found that he was able to close larger sales because he had a consistent sales process, but also pushed to financing as part of the process. Now remember, at the end of all this, your install team is going to go in there, and you're going to do a great job taking care of the customer. So we're recommending that you don't wait around for referrals. That at that point, if you've done everything you need to do to take care of that customer, you should have a one-page, simple survey that your install lead, when he signs off that final paperwork, or if it's you and your brother, that you have a simple thing that you ask for the referral right there. That you have your camera ready to take a picture, so you can maybe take a picture with the family, with their house or whatever else, to put in your records, and ask them if you can put them on your customer service wall of fame or in your presentation book and use them as a reference. But ensure that you ask for a reference up front. Don't ask for it down the road. People get busy. It's few and far between that you're going to get a letter in the mail from a customer saying, wow, how great it was. Don't wait for those. It's much more powerful to have, a couple hundred, homeowner surveys that are great with pictures of the homeowner and a brief statement from them than it is to have just a couple letters from a couple satisfied homeowners. Now, another creative thing that we've heard of a lot of guys doing on Whole House out there is actually taking, with thermal imaging guns, before and after pictures. So once they do install the work, they're actually sending them a framed picture of what their house looked like before and what their house looked like after with the gun. And I think this is just a great way of showing the customer that they did something right. And if you put it in a nice enough frame, some guys have even said that, you know, people will hang it in their office or anything else, their home office or anything else, and it becomes a discussion piece. You know, home energy efficiency isn't always as sexy as solar. It's not something sitting on the roof that you can go, hey, look at all my solar panels. Look at those things up there. A lot of that's hidden. This is a great, colorful way of showing somebody the difference in the house, and it's a conversation piece that might get you referrals down the way. As far as customer service is concerned, customer service can be your hardest complaint can become your greatest success story. And there's important parts to this whole thing. So if there is something that goes wrong during the sales or the whatever or during the install process, make sure that your first thing you do is listen to the homeowner, that you seek to understand. And I know not all homeowners are always easy to deal with, but remember, they're your customer. That you want to repeat back whatever they say to you, so you know that that what they're saying is what you're really hearing from them. Sometimes in frustration, people can't always get their point across very clearly, so it helps to repeat back what they say. And then always sympathize with their frustration and always and issue. And then seek to find a resolution. And then always ask the homeowner, you know, is this resolution, you know, fair to you? And at that point, you can turn sometimes your greatest complaint into your biggest success story. I had a customer I was sitting, or a contractor I was sitting in his office who had a water heater problem. He had done a whole house job and had changed out the water heater too. Well, that water heater, the person moved quite a bit or traveled around quite a bit, and he kept turning down his thermostat, and actually he was turning off his thermostat. So the contractor had to keep going back into the home to turn it on because he said something was wrong. So finally he had come up with a solution for the contractor where they went out and trained him how to properly turn down his water heater if he really wanted to save those energy savings or anything else. But as a result, ended up with this customer being so happy, ended up giving him another lead. So to a friend of his that also wanted some stuff done. So taking the extra step can sometimes be frustrating, but it can lead to more sales as a result. At this point, I'd like to hand it off to Ed Thomas, who will be talking about building the sales organization.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, we're going to transition a little bit from talking about kind of sales as a one-on-one process and something that every person in your sales organization should be doing, and talk a little bit more about how do you replicate that. Because to be successful, it's got to be more than one person in the organization responsible for sales. On one level, everyone in the organization has to understand that nothing happens until somebody buys something, and that we're all focused in that regard. But especially for the salespeople that have direct sales responsibilities, there's some things that you want to do to be able to replicate that success throughout your organization. We promised you, specific tactical things in today's webinar, and here's one of them. One of the things you want to do to build that sales consistency that Eric talked about that's so important is simply scheduling a weekly sales meeting. Frankly, just the act of saying that we're going to get together every week and we're going to face each other and we're all going to talk about what we did last week and what we're going to do next week, just by putting that stake in the ground, it requires everybody to at least once a week think about what they did last week and what they're going to do next week, and be able to report on that. So having that kind of a structure starts to kind of build that consistency. These are some of the things that you're going to want to have on that agenda each week, so everyone knows what's going to be expected of them to report on. But also, it's not just about them reporting on their activities, although you want to be sure they are talking about the leads that they've generated themselves, the sales that they've made, and how their closing rates are going. But you also use this as an opportunity to solicit from them, okay, what do you need to be more successful? What other sorts of marketing and sales tools do you need? What other sorts of service issues might be getting in the way of sales, or vice versa? And so this is their opportunity to share with you, boy, if we just had this thing, I could sell twice as much. Oh, really? Okay, so let's narrow in on exactly what that would be and what twice as much would look like. And maybe that is, upgrades to some of the presentation materials or some sort of specific targeted advertising or marketing campaign. This is also a time to do a little bit of role playing and focus on a particular either a particular barrier that everyone seems to be encountering, maybe it's the economy or whatever that is, but also an opportunity to role play around a particular competitive advantage that your company has, and being able to role play around how do you make sure that you're building in, this advantage that you have over, that you have over the other folks out there, so that you can start to, guide your customers in a way that's going to make it successful for them in getting what they want and making it successful for your company. And then also practicing how do we build on that success with referrals and leads and those sorts of things. So it's not just about giving some folks a big hug and hitting other folks with a 2x4 so that when they come to the meeting every week, they don't know if they're going to get the 2x4 or the hug. It's not about that, but it is about creating a sense of urgency, and it is about creating a sense of structure within your organization. Next. And that all, goes right on down from the attitudes of the sales folks, but to the presence of everyone in both sales and in service. Right? I mean, there's, the old thing about first impressions, from the time, folks walk through the doorway, from their first interaction with you. In fact, I heard something the other day that, you used to be talking about, well, your website, is your presence. But, more and more with search engine optimization, some folks know more about you by doing a search on your company on the web before they even get to your website. They've seen everybody else's opinion of you. But when you are face-to-face with them, it's got to be professional for all the reasons that Eric talked about. But you've got to build that into this with your sales folks so that they're being professional, but then so that the rest of the organization is mimicking that, because if the sales folks are all squared away and they're on time and they're doing everything right and they sell this job and then they throw it over the wall to the service department and they're slovenly, people are going to think, what happened to that guy what happened to that company I just bought from? This isn't the company that I'm used to dealing with. So you really need to demand this of your sales force. They're setting the pace in customer expectations, but then throughout the organization and everything that you're doing. And for those of you that attended the marketing webinar that we did, we talked, just about business cards, the fact that everyone in the organization needs to have those, and everything that you can do to put your best foot forward. Next. A key part, in replicating your success across multiple sales people is making sure that everyone has a shared vision. You may believe that as the owner of a company, well, we're a home performance company. Or you may believe, well, we're an HVAC company and we do this home performance stuff on the side. Wherever the PG&E Whole House Rebate Program fits within your organization, everybody needs to understand that so that everyone understands what success looks like. And that means, at those sales meetings, but also at the broader company-wide meetings, understanding who we are, what is our typical customer. When I was running the geothermal heat pump company in Colorado, we had a very clear vision. Our typical customer was a 1,500 to 2,000 square foot house. It was an existing home. We were retrofitting it. Maybe it had a propane furnace already. We were going to be going in and proposing a geothermal system with insulation upgrades so that we could right-size this system. And we knew, these were the kind of people that were planning to spend the rest of their life in this house. And they were all about comfort, and they were all about the lowest utility bills possible. And we knew that we needed so many of those sorts of sales in our pipeline in order to keep our 3 installation crews busy, but also to keep them consistently busy so that we could set expectations when we sold something as to when this was going to be installed. So you need to understand as your organization, what is your typical customer. Now granted, if somebody else comes along that, you're going to try to accommodate them, but you got to make sure that your organization's not running all over the state or running all over the PG&E territory, trying to do new construction, trying to do commercial, trying to do multifamily, when maybe that's really not what you're best at. And it takes a discipline that way within the sales force of selling things that your company can be successful at, and understanding what it is you're strong at and what it is that you're not so strong at, and how many times you need to do this over and over again to be successful, so that at the end of the day everyone knows what do we want to sell more of and what do we not want to sell. What do we want to, now maybe we're not going to tell people no, but we're going to double the price on that, because when we do that kind of stuff it takes so much longer than we normally take, and we wind up losing our shirt because we didn't price it correctly. Or sometimes you just have to tell folks, you know what, that's not us. When we were running the geothermal heat pump company, we didn't do conventional systems. So if they just wanted a conventional system, we would throw it over to one of our, one of the other HVAC companies in town. And because we knew that we couldn't do it as well as they could, because we were set up, to do these more complex, more high-end systems. And the sophistication of our folks really didn't allow us to compete with some of the folks that were just box swappers. So at the end of the day, the way this relates to sales, it's as much about corporate strategy, but really the bottom line here is the last bullet on this slide. Does your sales presentation match what you want? If you're telling people that, well, we're a home performance company, but your sales presentations are all about HVAC, then that's that's not going to be consistent. And then you're wondering why. Well, I sent the salesman out there to sell more home performance jobs, and they keep coming back with just HVAC systems. Well, because your whole estimating system, your whole presentation is geared around your NATE certifications and all of your your thermostat guarantees and all of the other sorts of HVAC-centric sorts of things. So you've got to understand that if you want those other kinds of jobs, everything you do in the company has to be modeled against that. And yes, we do box swapping. If you want a system replacement, we can do that for you. But let me tell you about this whole house approach and why we think that's a better approach, so that our conscience is clear that when we swap out that box and you're not comfortable because it wasn't properly sized in the first place, that you understand, oh yeah, that's what they were talking about, so that you're not creating lost opportunities to help folks along the way. Next. I don't want to get too philosophical on you, but I do want to point you to this this LinkedIn or the video that it's at the bottom of this. It's a long link. We're not going to play it right now, and it's actually from a company in Europe, but it's incredible to me, and it's not about home performance or home improvement even, but it does is a really neat primer on how you influence people. And Eric went through a lot of this in the earlier part of his presentation and talked about it tactically, but I just want to be able to pull back just a moment so that you understand what's going to motivate your customers, but also frankly what's going to motivate your sales staff, from the standpoint of of keeping them engaged and making sure that they're understanding and they're listening to the customers. As Eric said, you've got to at some point shut up and let the customer talk. Some people want to be sold to, but a lot of people just want to buy. And so they don't necessarily, they kind of gear themselves up. They don't want the pitch, but instead they want to be able to discover you on their own. And for some folks, it is about scarcity. And number two there, and I won't go through all of these, but we've seen that in some of the advertising. $4,000 rebate, get it today, as if it's going to go away. Those of you know that the utility rebates aren't tied to a particular upcoming short-term date, the way the ERA funds were. Nonetheless, we want to create some urgency. Some of the sales techniques that you see folks express are really around, as Eric said, number three there, being the authority. You've got these credentials. People want to look to someone who has some authority. People like to see consistency. When they see that kind of things that are being done logically, consistently, that makes them feel comfortable with you, could feel comfortable with buying from you. So it all plays into the psychology of sales and to the psychology of people, that if you're trying to help them out, then they want to help you. And so, and then there is this social proof, which we're really trying to build with Energy Upgrade California in general, to try to make this whole house approach make logical sense, but make it be, this is the way that you do things. This is the way most people buy home improvements. They do it with the test in and test out. They don't just buy individual measures. They do take this more comprehensive approach. We are trying to create those kind of social proofs, as we call it. So again, I don't want to get too theoretical on you, but we felt like we needed to throw in at least one slide and one place where you can go if you want to learn a little bit more about how we're wired and how people respond to things, and why it is important to listen to folks and understand what they're buying from you as opposed to what you think you're selling. Next. But, the hard dollars of this is we understand that folks are getting into home performance, and this is a slide that compliments of the folks at Green Homes America. They've been seeing this consistently in California, but then also across the country, where HVAC companies in particular that have moved to this home performance approach, they might be selling a smaller HVAC system, but oh, by the way, they sold air sealing and insulation, and they sold a water heater, and they're seeing higher close rates, but more importantly, bigger margins, because this is more complex, and it gives them more of a competitive edge in all of this, and it's a very, very compelling sale. So the average ticket price is going up. But next, it's also more about. It's not just about energy saving. So although we're here on behalf of the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, and we're here on behalf of Energy Upgrade California, and we'd like to think that people are doing this because they're going to get this rebate and their energy bills are going to go down. The reality is, those of you that have been doing this for any length of time at all, it is about comfort. It is about if you can make a case for you're going to be more comfortable upstairs. It's not going to be hot all the time upstairs. It's not going to be cold all the time in the basement, or downstairs rather. Then you make that case. And if you can tie this to their children's health, or to their indoor air quality, or to the safety of their home, then you've got people's attention. Because energy bills are one thing, but my cell bill is probably bigger. My cable bill, TV bill, is probably bigger than my energy bill in some homes. But they'll do anything to make their home more safe. They'll do anything to make their home more comfortable and a healthier place to live, especially with folks with children, especially folks that are up in years. So it is about energy. It is about all these other things, and there is certainly a segment of our audience that cares about the environment. And not just cares about the environment, but is ready to put their money where that concern is. And so, the opportunity to be more efficient about our resources, the opportunity to be more green is certainly a component of this as well. You can't afford to assume that it's any one of these things. You've got to be able to go into this situation prepared to talk about any of these things when the customer brings it up, and perhaps not a minute before. I wouldn't launch into a presentation about how green our company is, or how environmentally secure, sustainable we are, unless I knew through some pre-qualification that was something that was important to the homeowner. So you really you want to understand what's important to them, and that's what you're going to talk about. And then, oh, by the way, there's these other things too. If you want to know more about that, I can tell you about it. So giving them the opportunity to learn about that, to discover that about you, if they want to. And if they don't want to, then shut up about your blower door, shut up about your diagnostic equipment, because that's something that's maybe not as important to them as some of these other things that they may have stressed to you in some pre-qualification kinds of discussion. Next. Above all, we want to leave you with you've got to have this process, and we've talked about that, but we wanted to take one opportunity to just drill down one step lower. I talked about pre-qualification. So you've got to be generating leads, and I will go through each of these steps here. You've got to understand what is your sales pipeline, because when you're really, really successful, and all of a sudden you've got all of your crews busy, and one of your salesmen goes out there and sells something, and you can't get to it for 4 weeks because you're so busy, that's going to create a whole other problem for you. So you really need, so the last thing you want to do is be launching some big sales generation activity at a time when all of your crews are fully booked. Unless you know that from the time you generate a lead to the time you close a sale and to the time you get the first installers on the site, that's typically a 4 to 6 week process anyway, then you need to understand that all of our crews are really busy right now, but 4 weeks from now, we got nothing on the books. So we've got this freight train, right, and we're trying to feed kindling into this engine and trying to push it on down the tracks, and you need to understand and modulate where you can your sales generation activities, and so that means maybe not starting any new generation activities if you're fully booked, but at the same time, when you see things are really trailing off, that's when you want to start revisiting some of those leads that a year ago said they weren't ready yet. Maybe now it's time to call them and say, hey, we talked a year ago, are you ready to go now? Or, hey, there's this new thing that's coming down the pike. Hey, we've got this new Power Saver loan program. You said you didn't have the money. There's this financing program. Maybe we should revisit this. So you've got this generation activity. You've got this qualification because you really don't want your salespeople wasting time talking to folks that aren't ready to buy. You certainly don't want them talking to people that aren't able to buy. So, back to the points that Eric made about making sure you're talking to the decision makers. But if they're not able to buy and if they're not prepared to buy yet, then by all means find out, well, should we get back to you in 3 months, 6 months? But having someone else doing that qualification activity so that your sales folks can really focus on visiting with the customer, creating that proposal. I know some organizations within this whole house rebate program have whole shops. I mean, not to name names, Solar City has a whole shop that all they do is create proposals. So the salespeople are out there selling, presenting the proposals that are actually prepared by someone else. So you need to understand, what is the best use of your salespeople's time? Is it creating the proposal, or is it actually presenting that proposal and converting that, suspect into a prospect and converting that prospect, into a customer, and that conversion process and bringing that along. But not the least of which, these last 2 points we want to understand that especially when you've got multiple salespeople out there, at some point you've got to go back and look not at, gee, how much did they sell, but of the stuff they sold, let's analyze how profitable was that work. Did they estimate it correctly? Did they follow our guidelines? Or worse yet, did they follow our guidelines and we lost our shirt because they followed the guidelines? So we need to change the guidelines. And are you analyzing the profitability of those jobs and so on? And then adjusting your cost estimating, adjusting your perhaps incentives so that you're incenting your sales folks not just on how much they sell, but how much they sell profitably, or how much they convert their own leads versus what you have to spend to generate leads for them. So be thinking about it in those terms, and I think that starts to put into perspective what this sales process that you need to have in place, certainly when you have more than one salesperson. But if you have just one salesperson, it's just as important to do it this way, because you don't want to be an organization with just one salesperson forever. Ideally, you want to, success means being able to clone those folks in your organization. So if you put that process in place from the very first, it's going to be much easier when you add the second salesperson or when you add the third. Next. So we've covered a lot of information, but Eric, I'm going to throw it back to you, and so you can kind of summarize all the things that you talked about and maybe some of those things that I threw in there as well. Eric, did I lose you?
No, hey, thanks, Ed.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to hit the unmute button.
Okay.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, in summary, I think what we want to do is make sure that we're doing a few things here. One, that you set up a weekly sales meeting. It's a simple thing to do, and a lot of guys will tell me, well, it's just me and my brother, or it's just me and a few other guys. That doesn't matter. If it's just getting together at Denny's to sit and talk about best practices, talk about the sales, talk about closing ratio, and discuss those numbers, and then you should do it. Challenge each other to get better, because there might be things that you guys can share and role play through. How did you close that sale and how did you not? Also, make sure that your process is uniform. You don't want to leave out something that's going to be a hidden objection for a homeowner. Make sure you have a uniform sales process and that you can that you look for consistent ongoing training. If you are the only salesperson, then that ongoing training should be for you. That you're always trying to be a better salesperson as part of the process. And if you do have a team, that you're making sure that you get them the training that they need as part of the sales process. Also, that you're always building, that you not only offer financing, but you're building it into your proposal, that you're giving, remember, a chance for not only the cash buying customer that could write a check but has cash separation anxiety, but you're also setting it up so for the customer who needs that monthly payment plan, so that you always present a monthly payment so people don't have to be embarrassed that they can't write that big check because they can't afford that monthly savings plan. And oh, by the way, when I get my tax return, I can, pay that down or pay that off. And then by all means, if you're not already set up on a financing program or anything out there, that is key to the selling process. You're not only going to build value in yours as a company, but if you get to the end of the sale and that customer has no way to buy the product, so you've built all the value, you've shown them that you're the right company, and then you give your proposal and they can't afford that proposal or have that cash separation anxiety and can't and are afraid to pull the trigger, then you've lost the sale. So we highly encourage you, if you're not taking credit cards and you don't have a relationship with a lender, like the Power Saver program, and I'd also recommend probably an unsecured program to go along with that, so that there's two options, the one that has equity and the people who don't have equity in the home. You need to set those things up as soon as possible to make sure that you have the ability to close those sales that you've worked so hard to not only pull in the door, but to build value in and close. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. We're going to have some questions and answers here. And make sure you type those into the GoToMeeting application. So to start off opening up, you hear a lot about hard skills and soft skills, and maybe I'm not the best of people persons. That's kind of why I got into a technical field. So Eric, what kind of tips to kind of get over that intimidation of selling to people do you have? I'm just starting.
I think the important thing is to if you sit down and you spend the time to build your sales process, that'll help you overcome those objections. Because if you have consistency in the presentation, because remember, the key to selling is not what it's what the customer perceives, so value in. So the whole idea is building that sales process. And I think if you walked through that sales process in pictorial form in a presentation type system, that would help you overcome it, because it would, of course, keep you on track. I can give you a brief story of something that happened to me. I live in Stockton, California, and as a result of living in Stockton, I know you guys would be shocked, but my house was broken into. And I had two large dogs, but those two large dogs were asleep in the closet on this cold night, and they made it actually into our home. And so by that time, the dogs woke up and chased them out, and they're quite large. They're English Mastiffs, so the folks ran pretty fast. But my wife said, "Your dogs are useless. We need an alarm system." So I went out and started looking for guys to install my alarm system, and had multiple interviews with multiple different companies. And I got one of the contractors that came in was from Brinks, and when he came in, he had sort of a different presentation. He walked in, he walked the house, he got the estimate for me, sat down at the table, opened the laptop, put some numbers in, but then took a tent card system, opened it up, and then started to give me, asked me to, sit down and get comfortable, and said, "Hey, I just want to tell you a little bit about my company." He walked through his presentation system. And having taught this for years and seen it, contractors do it, I thought I was fascinated that Brinks was doing the same thing. Well, at the end of the presentation, of course, I asked him, I said, "So, hey, how long have you guys been doing this presentation system?" And he said, "Oh, at that time, we've been doing it for about 6 months." I said, "So, well, what do you think of it?" He goes, "Well, for the first 30 days, I didn't like it much, but, they had this calling system. They were calling to see if we were actually using it, and, I kind of got in trouble because I wasn't using it." So I said, "Well, that's interesting. So you're obviously using it now, so now what do you think about it?" He goes, "It's pretty fascinating. My sales have actually gone up 20 to 25%. I'm not really doing anything I thought too different, but I guess the sales presentation works. And to that point, I think what happens is in the sales presentation, the consistency and the overcoming those objections on paper, so that you don't really have to be a salesperson as much as you do have to be someone that's building value in your company. And I think that's what would help you.
I would agree, Eric. I think most folks feel like, well, I'm not a salesman. I just do good work, and you mentioned that early on in your presentation. So I think if you are a technical person and you can understand systems and processes, putting together that sales system is really going to play to your strengths. But more importantly, I think it is that last part you said, and if you can walk up to someone and explain that you're passionate about what you do and you're good at what you do, and you want to help them, and you want to share with them what you know that would help them. If you're really taking it from that attitude, you'd be surprised how successful you can be. The hardest part, though, is that once they say yes, to learn to shut up and leave, because a lot of people want to sell past the sale because they want to tell everybody everything they know. But I think that idea of being passionate, but I think you'll find that at some point within your organization, you'll find that maybe you're the technical whiz, and someone else is really the people person, and then you build your organization around those strengths. And at some point, you may just have to decide, this isn't the best use of my time. I need to go get a sales professional. I need to get, I need to make sure that so-and-so in the company takes on more of those responsibilities. But just because they're taking that on doesn't mean that you're not responsible. As the owner, you're going to be responsible for all of these things and for the success of it. So just because somebody else does your books, that doesn't mean that they aren't your books. And just because someone else is doing your sales, they're still your sales. So channel that passion, into sincerity when you're dealing with folks, and then, apply these processes, and you should do fine.
Thank you. Ed, I'll start with you. This is a question we received from Ben Thompson. After conducting the assessment and writing your proposal, how important is it to present the proposal in person? Is this something that can be done effectively on the phone?
What I am hearing more and more, because at least for folks in the Bay Area, and this may just be some San Francisco kind of blip, but I'm starting to hear about home performance contractors that are having success making their presentations just like we're doing right now with GoToMeeting. And so a situation where they set up an appointment, and the spouse, one spouse might be at home, another one might be at work, but they're both logged in to their computers, and the presentation is being made, through that kind of interaction. So it's even better than doing it on the phone. I know some folks email their presentation in advance and then give them a chance to review it, and then they set up a time. I know other folks are dead set against that because they feel like they're just giving this and people are going to take it to the competition. I think there's some mix here. You've got to understand some of your customers are very, very web savvy. They're very, very comfortable, on Skype, or they're comfortable over that. Other people, they just have to see face-to-face. And unless you're face-to-face with them, it's not real. So this is all going to be part of listening and understanding how your customer wants to buy from you, and then responding in what they want, as opposed to, well, this is the way we always do it. But I certainly know in this day and age, you don't necessarily have to drive out to their house and be toe-to-toe to be successful. But I'm not sure if that's the wave or if that's just a sliver of the market. I don't know, Eric, what are you seeing?
I would say that if you're going to do anything, I think the largest organizations we work with all do it in the home. But I think, there are the savvy enough clients. The very least you should do is use your camera and dress professionally so that they can see an image of you via the GoToMeeting or whatever else, so they're talking to a person. Because I think you'll see an increased closing ratio just by doing that, so that they can put a face with the bid. People buy from people.
Keep in mind, though, you've spent a lot of effort in putting this proposal together. If you've done a comprehensive energy analysis, you've invested a lot of time with these people already. So don't you dare try to make shortcuts around presenting it to save a couple bucks, because you're already into this for a couple bucks. I've had some real heart-to-heart conversations with folks that we all know on this call, I'll bet, Matt Golden and Recurve and those sorts of things. And in some candid conversations, what I've learned, among other things, is they really didn't spend the time converting those $199 audits, into $12,000 to $14,000 sales. And, they were in such a zeal to get these $199 audits done that they forgot that it was really about qualifying whether they should have been there in the first place doing the audit, and then really converting those folks. So don't shortchange yourself around that presentation. Realize that, in the scheme of things, that's probably, believe it or not, more important than the diagnostics, at least in the psychology of the sale.
Yeah, and I think if you have the right customer and you know that they're savvy and they're business people and they're really busy, that could be something that you said, if you tried to get a hold of them and get into the house a couple times and you couldn't do it, that could be something where you say, hey, you guys seem really busy. Hey, would you want me to Skype in, or do you want to use a GoToMeeting and let me catch you guys in both your places at the same time and go through this bid proposal? But I still highly recommend that you dress professionally and that you have the camera on you at that time so they can see some visual and you can talk through the process so they feel like, they're buying from a person.
Great. Erica, I'll start with you. We have a question here from Richard Heitschuh. Is there a software that's recommended for a proposal that will visualize savings, payback, and financing? And I'll add to that, or other tools.
Well, there's a lot of them out there right now. Of course, yes and no. Yeah, there's a lot of different programs out there, and different folks are using different programs. I think most people know them out there, but I would say the most important thing to do is to have a one-page sheet. Whatever you do, if it's your own, make sure that it's a one-page, easy-to-understand walkthrough for the customer that really outlines not only their savings, their benefits, whatever rebates they're getting, and as marked as a one-page thing that outlines their net monthly investment as an option. So really, I think the answer is in having a presentation system that at the end, when you do deliver the bid, actually is something that outlines all of those categories and shows them a net monthly investment first, so that they realize that they're preconditioned that it's affordable. So most of the software tools tend to be analytical, not as sales-oriented. I know that Imogen has a more sales-oriented HVAC approach, but it's not a whole house approach. Ed, do you know of any that have a more salesy approach to their software?
I'll tell you one. Go to SolarCity.com's website, and they have a sample home energy evaluation report that you can download, a sample report that they use, and it's it's a proprietary software tool that they use, but the report is up there, and I think you just kind of go to school on some of those, and it's just kind of one approach, but it really is about stripping down a lot of the analytics and really being able to present that value in a good, better, best. I just can't emphasize that enough. We were in New York, working with the NYSERDA program, and that's been around home performance about 12 years. And talking about sales consistency, and one of the top contractors there said, I always, always, always present a good, better, best. And they said, he says, just a week ago, I had an older couple. I'm presenting to them. They needed a new furnace. And so I gave them, here, if you need a new furnace, here's my furnace proposal. But you know what? There's this NYSERDA program and home performance. You could get these incentives. If we took a whole house approach, we'd actually put in a smaller furnace, but you get this insulation, and this would be the price. And then, oh, by the way, the best is, we do solar. And, if we did all of these other home performance things, we could put a small solar panel on your house, and you could be going towards net zero energy. Now, this is, again, an old couple there, that he's presenting this to, but, you asked me for a furnace replacement, but I'm going to take you through this whole process. And he says at that point, the woman turned to her husband and said, honey, you were going to retire next year, but if you worked one more year, we've already paid off the house. We could pay off our utility bill. We'd never have another utility bill. And the husband goes, I think you're right. Let's go ahead and do the net zero house. And this guy said, I was floored. I dropped my dentures. They would have been the last people I would have thinking we're going to put solar on their house. But he was, he makes sure that he's presenting that good, better, best. And they had gotten bids from other furnace companies. All the other furnace guys paid them as box swappers. So you really want to be that good, better, best, and you can do that, as Eric just said. You can do that in a page and make that case and really, really set yourself apart from everybody else, or almost everybody else out there. And if they just want a furnace, sell them a furnace, but you've given them a roadmap, you know, to the full gamut.
Thanks. I'll start with you, Ed. This is from Lucas Johnson. He's been running sales solo for the last 2 years and has finally built up his market. Thus, he's training some new sales guys and would appreciate some references, tips, you know, on resources on sales training tools for the industry.
I would say, you know, Lucas is really fortunate down in Santa Barbara because he's got Angie Hacker and the program down there that have been doing some great, you know, kind of support sorts of things. But you know, one of the things I would look at, you know, shameless plug here, you know, we did this three-part series that we're doing, but it's really been as a part of our monthly Leadership Academy webinars. So you can, you know, as an EGIA member, you can go back and look at those archived presentations that we've done and be able to assign your new salespeople to watch some of those. A lot of the material, too, that we've built in these presentations, we put together for Skyline College there in San Bruno. And they just ran a 16-hour course in business fundamentals. I don't know when they're going to run it again, but we've been helping them with that. So I would say, as much as we like to think we're unique, you know, sales is sales and business is business. And so I would start with the local community colleges and some of the general kinds of sales courses that they have. And then I would start, you know, digging through some of those archives, you know, there at the Leadership Academy and some of the other webinar resources that are out there, and you know, and just get that person networking with others. And I would have them doing what I was just telling you: Google the competition, Google what's going on in New York, and kind of go to school on the different approaches that you can find on the web of different companies, like the company that you want to be. So if you were to give this person, you know, someday when we grow up, we want to be the next blah, 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 and then send them out to look at that and model that success.
I guess I'll go to the next one here for Eric. I'll start with you. John Sutter was looking for any ideas on how to incentivize sales reps.
Well, I think their commission should be the thing that incentivizes them the most. And I think what I've seen with a lot of the sales organizations that I spend time with is that you really need to hire folks that are money motivated, because they're the ones that are out there closing jobs. So if you've got your commission structure set up and it's a you know, a 10% commission, you know, that should be incentive enough for them out there to drive it home if you're doing the marketing and you're doing the materials. But I think what also incents them is in having those weekly meetings and talking about best practices to get better. And if you build a culture where, what I've seen with some of these larger, you know, what I would call more marketing-oriented sales organizations, you know, $25 million, $30 million organizations, is that they tend to feed off of each other, the sales guys, and they tend to rise to the level of the next sales guys. And better sales guys get better sales guys in the organization all the time. And if there's that interactive flow of information between them all, and then of course the challenge between them all to do better, because you're actually talking about the numbers, I think that's when you start to see the increase in volume and increase in closing rate between them all. So I would say the competitions and showing those numbers every week, their commission should be enough. Now, if there is something special you want to drive home, so say they are only selling HVAC jobs, they're not selling as many jobs, and you have a little bit more margin, then I have seen guys take, you know, for certain periods of time or anything, take a little bit, you know, offer a little bit higher commission on certain projects or whatever else, just to sort of incent the contractor to take, or the sales guy to take the step towards selling more home performance, and then, you know, whittle that back down to the basic commission structure in time. So I would say, you know, get them all talking to each other.
And I've certainly seen that too. You know, in you know, if you've got, as you say, if you've got jobs that you know consistently deliver better margins, then you have an opportunity to incent those salesmen for selling more profitable jobs. So if you've got a 10% commission on gross sales, but you know what, if there's a home performance job in there, or if there's insulation with HVAC, we know that consistently we're doing better in those kinds of jobs, so we can give them an incentive bump. Those kinds of things. Then when you start moving their cheese, like you said, they're money motivated. You're going to tell them that it's not just about how much you sold, because they'll come back at you, well, it was a $12,000 job. Yeah, but we lost $4,000 on it. So give me a job where we make $6,000 and I'll pay you 15%. But so one of the things I used to do is make sure that we had a sales incentive, but there was also a profitability incentive, and I made sure that that was a team incentive with the people that were installing the job and the person that sold the job. And make part of the process is at the very end, that salesperson that sold it, at the very end, they have to go to the walkthrough and visit with the customer that last time, to be there face-to-face to ask the question, did you get everything that we promised you? Are you happy with all of this? And making sure that at that point, the salesperson has to stay connected to that job throughout the process and understands that their success is really tied to the installation crew's success in doing this stuff profitably, not just selling it and kind of moving on. So I think those are the kinds of things that we've seen. And I tell you, I ran a company, and we had one salesperson when I came on board. The first thing I did is, number one, I started selling two. Even as the manager, I made sure that I sold at least one job a month, so the sales guys couldn't say, you don't know what it's like out there. And then the second thing I did is I hired a second salesman. And the minute I hired a second salesman, sales didn't double. They went up 2.5 times, because there was, just like Eric said, you've got these two folks that are now able to collaborate, but they're also sort of kind of hopefully a friendly competition. And they're fighting over who can close the lead quickest. And then I'm throwing myself into the mix so that they understand that I can empathize, and I know what it's like out there, and I know what they need to get the job done. And then they couldn't BS me, right, as much as salespeople like to do that.
Thanks. Ed, I'll start with you. These next kind of questions from Craig Larson and Barbie Bodette are somewhat similar, and you may be touching on it next month on the June 15th webinar on conducting your whole house business tune-up. But it's kind of what kind of disclaimers should you put in your report in the event that the consumer kind of shops the proposal around, or these maybe one-off non-in-person proposal pitches? What do you need to kind of protect yourself from them kind of taking your proposal out to their competition?
I think you have to assume that everything you give them, somebody else is going to see it. And I think, witness the fact that this Solar City thing, I'm challenging you that they don't think that what their secret sauce isn't something that it's not about the report, on the one hand. So when you look at, on the one hand, I would err on the side of perhaps sharing too much, knowing it's going to get on the hands of somebody else, but making sure it's what you don't put in there. You don't break out your costs. You don't break out labor and materials. You're not breaking it out. You're just maybe giving an all-in kind of price. That's the leave behind. And then you make sure that you're putting in there bullets of, and this includes blah, 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 so that you can say, oh, and here are our credentials. And I might even go so far as to challenge folks and say, hey, by the way, if you're going to shop this around, here's the questions you need to ask. And give them a checklist. Oh, do they have insurance, or are they part of the Energy Upgrade California? Have they done criminal background checks? Have they, and I got insurance and bonding? I mean, throw all that in there and say, look, if you're going to go shop this around, this is what you ought to be asking. But now I'm going to tell you something just the opposite. If I think they're really out shopping me, I probably wouldn't give them a bid in the first place. I mean, I know that a lot of folks out there are saying to folks during that pre-qualification, oh, by the way, we're not the cheapest guys in town. Oh, by the way, we're not going to just give you a commodity price and just blow and go. We're not box swappers. We're not blow and go insulation guys. So if that's what you want, you probably don't want our proposal, because we just don't do things that way. However, if you're interested in a comprehensive approach and you're interested in quality, then we will take the time to come out, but I'm not going to quote it over the phone. I have to come out and see it, and we're going to give you this proposal, and then, yeah, you're welcome to shop it, but we want you to shop it with like-minded folks. So there, what I'm telling you is, if you know they're just shopping you, don't go, and you know that when people shop you, you lose because you can't compete on price or whatever that is. If you smell like they're just shopping you, you might want to say, you know what, I'm probably not the best one for you. Because don't invest all this time in somebody if you don't think you're going to close it. By the same token, when you do present this, if you get any sniff, I mean, if they're not talking about shopping it, you're not going to bring it up. But the minute somebody says, well, geez, we've got to think about this, or I want to talk to somebody else, that's when I whip out, oh, by the way, if you're going to talk to somebody else, here's what you need to ask.
Kind of a question I have, along those lines about pricing and kind of defending your markup so you're not going out of business by doing charity work as well for doing good for the environment. Do you have any advice for those people that say, well, think about it. We have to think about the price and all that.
I think the most important thing, and I think it goes into what Ed was talking about before, I think the whole idea is that you got to build value for the customer up front, and that's part of the whole presentation system is building that value. That's part of having a professional sales team that cares about what they do, that's highly trained to do those types of things, and that's part of putting a price in the marketplace so that it's affordable. Because if something's keeping them from doing it, then they either are A, worried about their resources, they're worried about whether they have the resources to get the job done, so they don't have the money in the bank. B, they just have that cash separation anxiety, and they want it, or they're just folks that are just wondering what they're going to do. And so, like I said, I think through the sales process, if you ask for the sale, you offer a payment option, and you do everything you can to get the sale, and then you follow up. We kind of have a rule that we'll make 2 phone calls to follow up with the customer when they're still trying to decide, and then at that point, it's email follow up or just say, hey, have you made a decision yet? Tell me yes or no, kind of a thing. But I would say if you build that value, then you've done everything you can at that point. So I think the whole idea is just that if you implore all those things that we talked about, you're going to close more jobs.
But you really have to pre-qualify it, right? I mean, you need to make up front that they understand, gee, why did you call, like you said, why did you call me? What do you think the problem is? Okay, I'm going to look at your house, and you're going to maybe pay me an assessment fee. And, oh, by the way, there's these incentives out there, and the incentives are, up to $4,000, but we're seeing that jobs like this could run $12,000 to $15,000. At some point before you put your proposal together, you might want to be asking, oh, we offer financing. Is that something that would interest you? So you're trying to get at, do you have a way to pay for this? Because if you don't have $12,000, maybe you don't need my assessment. And that's kind of tough love. But again, you've got to figure out where to invest your time. And they need to understand right up front that it costs money to save money. And so you shouldn't be finding out after you've done your presentation that they don't have the money to pay for this. You really need to be setting that in your pre-qualification. I know some contractors that they won't go out to meet with the customer to do the assessment unless both decision makers are there and unless they've already done a pre-approval. We're fortunate with the Power Saver program that we've got a lender that's out there. They will pre-approve the borrower for up to $25,000 before you even go out there to do the assessment. So you're going out there knowing they have the wherewithal to do this, rather than you having to be sitting there in their living room saying, do you have any equity in your house? Do you own this house? How long have you been here? And, trying to ask these banker questions when you could just say, hey, there's this great program. Go there and get pre-approved. Tell them I'm your contractor. And then, we're going to work together to get this for you. So those kind of nuances can just give you a way to kind of, and if the customer's, oh, no, I've got plenty of cash, or I've got a home equity line of credit checkbook, okay, I'll be right over. That's where you want to make sure in that pre-qualification phase.
Excellent. Ed, I'll start with you. This webinar is going to end here shortly, and I'm going to be off on my own selling jobs. What are some what should I do as soon as this webinar is over to kind of continue building my sales skills?
Go sell something. Go have some success, right? I mean, go find, based on what we just talked about, that one person that maybe you went to recently that you think now you're kind of better armed and you could go back to and close that one. But really focus on maybe, pulling out who are your best prospects at this moment, and go through that list and start checking off, and maybe you need to fire some of those prospects. Maybe there's some folks there that you said, in my gut, we're never going to sell those guys anything, and so maybe I need to have this pre-approval, pre-qualification discussion with them before I go any further. Or, hey, there's some folks that gave me some signals that they were ready to buy, and you just want to get some confidence. And so, if you can have a couple of those successes, because you're going to get 10 no's, for every yes, and then sooner or later you'll get 8 no's, and then you'll be down to 5 no's for every yes. But try to focus your time on where you think you're going to be the most successful in the short term. Okay, what could I close this week? What calls could I make today or by next Wednesday that are really going to help us turn the company around? And make sure that you're spending your time where it's going to be most useful, and not just trying to do a little bit everywhere, because if you're all things to all people, you're nothing to nobody.
And I think the other action item I would do is make sure that you have your first sales meeting to sit down and talk about, building that presentation system if you don't currently already have one, what your sales process is going to look like after you've identified the stuff that Ed talked about on there, as who you are as a company and what you're going to offer. And then, get the salesman's buy-in, and then build that consistency after that, so that you are giving that consistent sales presentation that uncovers those hidden objections, that you are having those sales meetings, and that you're building your sales organization.
And I would tell them all that that have them listen to this recording. Tell them you just went to this great recording and you just got this great insight and you've got these slides and this is this new direction we're going to take, and I want to have all of you listen to it. And so realize if you're wildly successful, it'll be because you did a good job. And if this doesn't work for you, it was because Ed and Eric didn't know what the hell they were talking about.
And finally, Eric, you had some words.
Oh yeah,
for
so
us,
let's
some advice?
words. Next slide here. So we just want to leave you with these this word of wisdom here, and that is that the key to selling is not what you know or you perceive value in, but what the homeowner perceives value in. So your job as a salesperson is to manage their perception, especially if you're going to sell something that's that's as comprehensive and as expensive as whole house home performance. Managing that perception is the most important thing, because you're going to have people coming behind you just trying to sell boxes, as Ed said. So remember that you might see yourself as the lion, but that's not as important. That homeowner might be seeing you as the kitty cat. So it's your job to make sure that they see you as that lion.
Great. Ed, any final thoughts for us?
No, that's fine.
All right. Well, we are just about out of time. However, there are some questions and comments that we'll be passing along to Ed and Eric that we didn't get to. Of course, I want to thank Ed and Eric and all of you for joining us today, as well as our promotional partners. As we mentioned, we'll be emailing all of you a link to view the recording for today's web exchange. If you missed out on last month on marketing, I believe you can still register to get a recording of that. But next month on June 15th at 10 o'clock in the morning, we will be talking about whole house performance, the third and our final part of this webinar series. We'll be conducting your whole house business performance tune-up. So be sure to register for that. And we look forward to seeing you next month. And this ends today's webinar. Thank you very much.